Welcome to another episode of the International Volleyball Academy, where our goal is to help you become even better volleyball players than you already are. Let's not waste any time and get straight to it.
In episodes 5, 6, and 12, we focused on practicing spiking. So far, however, we have only worked under ideal, unchanging conditions. Right from the first footages, we can notice differences depending on whether the attacker spikes from the left or right, from the front or back zones, or whether they execute a quick attack through the middle of the net, known as a quick set.
This episode, as well as the upcoming ones, will address these variations, as well as the application of basic techniques in unpredictable game situations. But first, let's revisit the key insights about spiking that we have already gained.
Everything starts with the proper movement of the hitting arm. In the beginning, we had to help the kids understand this complex movement. Then we introduced the spiker's two-step approach. Remember? The second-to-last long step lands on the heel, and the final step lands on the pivoted toes. The second-to-last step is accompanied by a powerful arm swing. We explained that this applies to both spikers and blockers. Next, we taught the kids how to throw correctly, positioning their bodies optimally relative to the net, first on the ground and later in the jump. We carried out various exercises with the kids, all with one goal: to automate the basic movement pattern. Once this was in place, we could start working on the actual hit, again, first on the ground and then in the jump. And once more, a single movement pattern executed in 1,000 different ways. As always, we relied on wall drills. These drills never lie. They test the level of ball control. After that, we moved on to attacking, starting with held balls and later transitioning to tossed balls. Finally, we wrapped up with preparatory games both at the wall and on the court.
In the upcoming episodes, we will explore the differences in spiking based on the set types, what this means for training, and we'll look for suitable exercises for all variations. What we've learned about the spiker's approach doesn't always apply 100%, as players simply don't have time to execute everything by the book during a game. Game situations often force players to shorten their approach or even attack without an approach at all.
However, the game also brings additional possibilities, such as a surprise attack on the second contact, or, in challenging situations, an attack with a single leg takeoff. In short, we are beginning to map out all the situations players may encounter, where they must adapt their basic technique to fit the circumstances.
We will also examine how technique changes depending on the direction the spiker is attacking. An unwritten volleyball rule states that a spiker, who typically attacks from the left, should primarily master diagonal hits. Then there is the so-called in-body hit, where the hitting arm swings down across the chest, on the left side for right-handed players and on the right for left-handed players. The opposite is the out-body hit, where the right arm completes the movement to the right side of the body. Another area includes overhead hits that go over the block or aim to graze the block.
Situations where the attacker takes advantage of imperfections in the block are quite common. This primarily includes tooling the block, where the ball deflects off the hands of the blockers and goes out of bounds. Another common scenario occurs when the blocking players fail to close the gap in time and the attacker exploits the hole in the block.
Then there's another scenario where a player, in a relatively challenging situation, deliberately sets the ball into the block, assuming their teammates will cover it and create a new, better starting position for a repeated attack. Alternatively, the attacker may push the ball through the block. This is usually done with one hand, but recently, attacks using both hands have become increasingly common. Lastly, there's the intentional deflection of the block, where the attacker presses the ball against the blocker's hands and directs it out of bounds. Sometimes, the player simply keeps the ball in play on their side, ensuring the rally continues.
And then there's the entire repertoire of so-called tips, where the player uses an open hand with spread fingers to place the ball just behind the block. To effectively deceive the opponent, the initial movement must mimic a spiking motion, with the elbow drawn back. A frequently used variation is the power tip, where the contact between the open hand with spread fingers and the ball lasts longer. Since this technique pushes the boundaries of what is considered carrying the ball, it often sparks debates about how it should be judged.
At the Olympic Games in Paris, power tips were initially judged as illegal, but the established trend could not be maintained. Even here, the rule remains that the arm motion during the strike must mirror the movement of a spike. Masterful execution of another technique, the roll shot, is demonstrated by players like German Grozer and Brazilian Lucarelli. Again, emphasis is placed on the proper arm movement. Then there's the lob, which, when executed perfectly, can be highly effective in gameplay, much like the side spin showcased by Danish Madsen. We will finish the repertoire of types of strikes with a two-handed attack in both men's and women's submissions.
The type of block the attacker faces, whether it's a single, double, or triple block, significantly influences the nature of the attack. Against a single block, the attacker typically aims to strike the ball quickly around the block, driving it sharply downward to minimize the defender's chances of retrieving it. Top-level players attempt the same strategy against a double block, but the risk of being blocked increases. As a result, it's more common to see attackers aiming to hit over the block or tool the block. A similar situation arises when facing a triple block, although the tendency to exploit gaps or weaknesses in the block is even more prevalent. Finally, there's the setter's attack, which brings its own dynamics into play. And now, a brief recap.
Everything we've discussed today is just an overview, and we will delve into each topic in more detail in future episodes. Today we began addressing the character of attacks from different zones, situations where the player cannot execute an optimal approach during play, the directions of attacks from various zones, utilizing the block to achieve success in attack. Various types of strikes, including tips, roll shots, and lobs. attacks against a single block, double block, and triple block, the setter's attack.
And what will we learn next? Everything we've covered today will be explored step by step with a detailed breakdown, including training methods, a variety of drills, and preparatory games. Take care.